All right, let's dive into a story about a cyber attack that became so much more than just a technical problem. This is a story about warnings that were ignored, a digital collapse that was absolutely devastating, and, the battle for the truth itself. And that's the voice of Alberto Daniel Hill. He's a cybersecurity expert, and his warnings about Uruguay's digital defenses, well, they went unheard for years. His personal journey is really at the heart of this whole national crisis. So what we're going to do is explore how his predictions turned into a terrifying reality for one of the country's most important banks. And, maybe more importantly, what it tells us about that gap. The gap between the stories our leaders tell us and the disasters that are brewing just beneath the surface. But first, who is Alberto Hill, and why is his story so critical to understanding this whole mess? See, to really get the storm, you first have to understand the guy who saw it coming. His journey is pretty wild. He went from being this respected expert to actually being imprisoned for reporting a security flaw. So that gave him this unique and, let's face it, pretty painful perspective on the systemic rot he saw. He wasn't just guessing. He was seeing the evidence that the whole system was built on sand, and he was basically screaming it from the rooftops. And then, in late 2025, the storm he had been predicting finally hit. And boy, did it hit a target that was central to the entire nation's financial stability. Suddenly, Uruguay's state mortgage bank, BHU, just went dark. And the timing? It could not have been worse. It was right in the middle of their month-end financial closing. But the public was told, hey, don't worry about it, it's just a little technical glitch. Right, so almost immediately, two completely different stories started to emerge. And this created a real battle for the truth that was playing out in real time. On one side, you had the official narrative. They framed it as a manageable, kind of routine IT incident. But on the other side, you had experts like Hill calling it what it really was, a digital hijacking, a full-blown national crisis in the making. The official story was all about prevention, we're being proactive. But the truth on the ground was that a catastrophic data theft had already happened. The key thing to get here is that the shutdown wasn't to protect the data, it was because it was already too late. Hill argued this wasn't just some communications blunder. He called it a deliberate strategy. The protocol of silence. It was this attempt to control the story, to hide the fact that they were being extorted, and to dodge all the legal and public fallout from this massive breach. So what was really going on behind the scenes? Let's break down the anatomy of what this sophisticated, modern cyber attack actually looked like. The bank got hit with something called double extortion ransomware, and it's a total nightmare scenario. First, the attackers get in and they quietly steal all your most valuable data. Then, and only after they have it all, do they lock up your systems. So the bank wasn't just locked out, it was being blackmailed with its own customers' private information. The attackers, a group called Crypto24, said they took over 700 gigabytes of data. Now, to put that in perspective, that's like hundreds of thousands of documents. It's like wheeling out the entire digital filing cabinet of the bank and all its customers. And look, this wasn't some random smash and grab. These attackers were surgical. As you can see from this breakdown, they went straight for the most sensitive data you can imagine. We're talking customer PII, that's personally identifiable information, names, national IDs, basically the keys to someone's identity. They grabbed financial records, loan details, payment histories, and they even stole legal contracts and the bank's own internal IT security configurations. They didn't just rob the bank, they stole its blueprints. So let's be crystal clear about what this means. We're talking about the complete financial lives of thousands of families. Their national ID numbers, their mortgage agreements, their payment histories, even the titles to their homes. All of it was now in the hands of criminals. And don't think for a second that these were some amateur hackers. This chart really shows they were operating at a professional level, using tactics a lot like notorious groups, say Lockbit. For that initial access, they probably used phishing or found an exposed digital door, what we call an RDP. Then to evade defenses, they used custom tools to shut down the bank's security software, the digital security guards. They were skilled, they were patient, and they knew exactly how to dismantle the bank's defenses from the inside out. This attack, it wasn't just some random event or a bolt of bad luck. It was the predictable, inevitable consequence of ignoring years and years of warnings.
As Hill put it, Uruguay had been racking up a national cyber debt by underinvesting in security and ignoring experts. And the BHU attack, well, that was the moment the bill for that debt finally came due. And the payment was just catastrophic.
And the crisis just escalated with terrifying speed. I mean, look at this timeline. October 1st, the bank shuts down. By October 2nd, they're playing it down as just an IT incident. But only 2 days later, on October 4th, the hackers themselves, Crypto24, go public and start a 10-day extortion clock. In just 72 hours, this went from a private technical problem to a very public hostage crisis. And the damage went so far beyond the bank's servers. This single breach just shattered public trust. It created massive legal risk for the government, and it threatened the housing sector, which is a cornerstone of the whole country's economy. But right at the center of it all were the thousands of regular people whose personal data was now a weapon that could be used against them. Ultimately, this whole story reveals a dangerous truth that applies way beyond Uruguay. It really applies to any country, any company that isn't being honest with itself. See, the real vulnerability isn't just a weak password or a server that needs an update. It's that gap between the official story that everything is fine and the actual truth on the ground. Because that space right there, that's where disaster lives. And it really forces us all to ask ourselves, when our ambition gets too far ahead of our defense, when the desire to build this amazing digital future outpaces the will to actually secure it, isn't every single country at risk of the exact same kind of collapse?